Due to limited time, I will probably ask only one or maximum two questions to each of you. Okay. 먼저 한국말로 시작하겠습니다.
Let me start in Korean.
To Misun 상무님, in respect of the fact that the majority of the audience today are Korean speakers.
So when you were speaking, you talked about the need to speak out during meetings, and you also talked about the need for internal politics when necessary. And also, Mr. Gary Ford also mentioned that women are very strong in details, and that is why sometimes they are given roles of project management or administrative work, and sometimes they are excluded from roles where you are given the opportunity to engage in internal politics, actually. And also, women sometimes say that I don't have time to engage in politics, and some women say I don't like politics. I think that if I work hard in my given position, then people will recognize me. So what do you think about this? Can you give any advice to the women? So I'm sure that everyone wants to play a very strategic and important role. But as a leader, I think that whether it's women or men, who's good at details? Well, there are people who are not good at details and who are not strategic. And it depends on your experience, depends on whether you've had that experience to help you grow into a person that's good in details or very good at strategic work. So, for example, people submit plans that they have drawn up, and there are people who are good at this and there are who not. So what I want to say is that if you want to play that role, that be in that position that's very strategic, or these particular roles that require details, I think that you should grow the habit of looking at things from a company-wide perspective, and also think about the performance that you've been making and be very specific. Don't say I did well. Say that I have contributed to this and that in a very specific manner, and promote yourself. For example, don't say this over coffee or lunch, but be very specific in the official meeting. Say that in this project, I contributed to financial performance of how much. And also say that when you have your daily conversations, and promote yourself. And also, if you want to take on those strategic core positions, talk about the ideas that you have and express your desire to play that role and be in that position, and someone will remember you.
The next question is to Mike. Mike, the question is as follows. Some managers say that implementing more flexibility and work-life balance measures is a luxury for big companies in this die or survive type of market environment. For smaller companies and for startups in particular, that seems like a very difficult choice to make from the executives and from the CEOs. So what is your advice to those smaller companies?
I don't think it's a luxury. I think it's a necessary. Startups and large corporations have the same goal, which is to be successful. Both, whether you're at the very late stage or at the very early stage, you need to generate revenue. So you're going to hire talent. So when I look at startups hiring folks all across the region, they're going to hire the most diverse teams. We live in a global society now. You can't have a team that's only Koreans or only males or only Southeast Asians. In order to win globally now, you have to have diversity because your user is diverse. The people who use Samsung, Instagram, Google are not just Korean. They're all over the world. So to build that product, it is not a luxury to be diverse. In order to succeed, you have to have a diverse team now. We don't live in a world where your product is only going to help the Korean people. You're building a product now from day one that has to help a woman in Indonesia, a man in London, someone else in Sao Paulo. So I don't see it as a luxury. I see it as a just necessary thing to do.
Thank you, Mike. The next question is for Gary. Gary, this is a tough question. Okay. Inclusive leadership, as you call it, is a good idea, but not necessarily always the most efficient type of leadership in all cases, because sometimes divide and rule politics can get you far. And in fact, in the real world, many people indeed became extremely successful, building up on the existing patterns of discrimination in politics. What do you say to that?
Yeah, thanks for that nice, easy question. So I realise that. I've come across clearly many individuals like that, but I'm not convinced you have to do that to be successful. I do recognize that managers have to do some tough things, right? Sometimes they have to make decisions that are unpopular, right? Sometimes they have to make decisions quickly without necessarily having time to build consensus. Sometimes, or in fact always, they need to set standards and actually give people feedback when they don't meet those standards, right? And also, if your team is not performing, then you probably need to take action. I think managers, leaders have to do those things all the time, but you can still do that and you can still be an inclusive leader. Because I'm a strong believer that if you want to build a high-performing team for the long term, the carrot is better than the stick. I'm absolutely convinced of that. I feel like I've built some very high-performance teams in the past, I'd like to think. So I think being inclusive is not just being nice and kind. It's doing the right thing for your team to help them succeed and generate proper business performance. The final thing I would like also to say is the fact that we are not perfect, right? No matter how inclusive you want to be, you'll still get this wrong, right? I mean, I get it all wrong all the time. So I think kind of recognizing and being human is actually quite a valuable trait in a leader. And actually, I think people and teams respond when they see their leader, behaving that way. And when they make a mistake, being able to say, I made a mistake, I'm really sorry, and I'll try and maybe do a little bit better next time. But, so, yes, there are political maneuverings. Actually, I was never very good at that. That's maybe why I kind of, never quite made it to CIO. But I don't think it has to be that way.
Thank you. This was very helpful. Now, the next question is to Shweta. Several participants actually sent their comment through Slido that while introducing corporate policies and targeted measures to promote and designate a certain number of women executives in the board would be desirable indeed, but some men in their companies may resist such measures, saying that it would constitute a reverse discrimination. Now, what would you say to that, and how do you think companies can wisely manage such resistance?
So the last thing we want to do is promote reverse discrimination, right? We're all talking about parity. We're all talking about diversity, equality, parity. Reverse discrimination is equally bad, I would say that, right at the upfront, right? But I think we have a long way before we reach that situation. To be very honest, the facts, the statistics, the figures, the incidents, and the conversations we've been having right since the afternoon talk about that how we really need to drive a change. And I'm hoping I'll still be in the work stream when we do reach that stage. It'd be interesting to see how things pan out at that point in time.
Thank you. Now, the last question goes to John. John already touched upon a little bit on GSMA's efforts to reduce the gender pay gap. Can you just elaborate a little bit? I mean, not just GSMA's experience, but what is your sort of advice to reduce consciously and effectively to reduce the gender pay gap that is still very much entrenched across the sectors?
Well, as I mentioned in my presentation, it's, it needs to really come from the top. The CEO or the leadership need to acknowledge that first, recognize that there is an issue, okay? Recognize that there is a big gap, whilst at the same time working with the middle management levels and of course the rest of the staff, okay, to actually train them to realize that this gap within this company, within this organisation exists. Now, within GSMA, I think you saw the data and that I put forward, shared with you. The gap is very, very minimal, and we're very, very proud of that. But we are also aware that in many of our adjacent industry partners, the gap is quite big. And the most important thing to be able to do that is to actually have, number one, training, okay, internally. Number two, HR, getting the direction from the leadership team or the CEO that recognises it and does makes every effort to close that gap as fairly as possible, taking into consideration the diversity requirements of that organisation. Yeah, so, yeah.
Thank you very much. I only have the time to ask one more question, and I'll ask back to Misun An. 멘토십이나 스폰서십 관련해서
So in terms of mentorship or sponsorship, we say that women should mentor or sponsor women. Some say that women are already busy with their given tasks, and people are really busy balancing their work-life balance. So some say that why do we have to do that extra mile, go that extra mile? So could you please share your experience and why we have to do more and help our female colleagues for them to grow? Do you have any advice? Well, I had no female mentors. However, a lot of male mentors helped me to grow, and so I received a lot of coaching from them. And I think that coaching, it doesn't have to be male or female, but coaching and mentoring is important because it helps you look back at yourself and think whether you're going on the right track. And also, I receive reverse mentoring from the people that work with me, and I'm receiving a lot of help from my team members. So I think that regardless of gender, mentoring and sponsorship is something that we need to help one another grow together. And there's one more thing that I would like to say regardless of this, and it's not related to this question, but we tend to say that we're breaking the glass ceiling. But I think that, and I want to say this in a very bold manner, we're not breaking the glass ceiling, but we have to melt the glass ceiling. And through mentorship and sponsorship, we can melt the glass ceiling. That's my view. Yes, thank you very much.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause to our fantastic speakers.